All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing, a grassroots economy that's popping up all across China, and it all starts in the aisles of giant warehouse stores like Sam's Club. It's this incredible story about social media, huge cakes, and some seriously clever entrepreneurs who are basically hacking the entire system.
I mean, you've totally been there, right? You're staring at this massive box of something you love, but deep down, if you buy it, half of it's just going to go bad. Well, in China, that exact problem has kicked off a whole underground economy. And believe me, it's starting to completely change how retail works.
And this slide right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. On one side, you have the whole warehouse club model, which is basically buy a ton of stuff or go home. But on the other side, you've got the modern consumer, people living alone, smaller families, people who want to try new things without buying a lifetime supply, and folks who are, watching their budgets. It's in that massive gap between supply and demand that this whole story really takes off. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at what this whole thing actually looks like on the ground. Then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the business model. After that, we got to talk about the hidden risks, and there are some big ones. Then we'll give you the playbook for how it's done. And finally, we'll see how the big retail giants are trying to fight back. Okay, first up, let's dig into how this simple idea can take a members-only warehouse, which is usually way out in the suburbs, and turn it into something that feels just like your friendly local corner store. So this whole phenomenon actually has a name, the private domain split-sharing economy. Private domain just means it's all happening in these closed, invite-only groups like a private chat. You have a group leader who uses an app, and it's almost always WeChat, to coordinate these huge bulk purchases. Then they literally split the goods up for everyone in their little network. This is so much more organized than just, splitting a pizza with your buddies. All right, so how does this really function as a business? Let's deconstruct the mechanics, because this goes way beyond just a clever life hack. We're talking about a surprisingly sophisticated little commerce engine here. To really get what's happening, you have to think of this as group buying 2.0. The first wave, led by giants like Pinduoduo, was pretty simple. Get a bunch of people together to get a lower price. But this new model, it's different. It's not just about being cheaper. It's about getting access. It's a consumer-driven solution to real problems, like expensive membership fees and ridiculous packaging. It solves for waste, not just for price. What this really means is that these group leaders become what you could call folk distributors. They're basically acting like unofficial product managers. They take a standard item, like a huge 2-kilogram steak, and they redefine it for their community, turning it into 4 perfect 500-gram portions that a small family can actually use. And what's truly mind-blowing is that this entire operation runs on practically zero-cost infrastructure. The whole business lives and breathes inside one single app, WeChat. The group chat is the community hub. The mini programs are the ordering and payment system. WeChat Moments, that's their visual storefront. And WeChat Pay handles all the money seamlessly. It's a complete business in an app. So why is this trend so massive? Well, look at this number, 240 million. That's how many single adults there are in China. Now, when you add in all the small nuclear families, you suddenly realize that the traditional one-size-fits-all bulk buy model is completely out of sync with a huge and growing chunk of the market. And let's be clear, for the really good group leaders, this is a real business. They're not just doing favors for friends. Their profit comes from all over. They add a small service fee for their work. They earn those cash rebates from the premium membership cards on massive order volumes. They cleverly play the free delivery system. And of course, they get a little markup by selling those smaller portions at a slightly higher per unit price. It is a brilliant arbitrage game. But this model that looks so perfect on the surface, well, it has a pretty serious dark side. We're now entering what you might call the gray area, where this awesome grassroots idea runs into some really big and, honestly, pretty scary problems. It really seems like a win-win for everyone, doesn't it? But what happens when you're dealing with food that can spoil? What's the real chain of custody for a piece of cake that's been cut up in some random person's kitchen? This is where you start to see the cracks appear. This quote just nails it. The single biggest risk is food safety. This isn't happening in some clean, regulated facility. It's happening in someone's home. There have been these infamous stories of cakes being split in totally unsanitary conditions, even in bathrooms. Without a license, without any oversight, if somebody gets sick, the trail just goes completely cold. So the bottom line is that this whole system is floating in a legal gray area. I mean, beyond the food safety nightmare, you've got missing ingredient labels, no production dates, There's the risk of fraud where leaders could swap in cheaper products. And since they don't have a business license, if anything goes wrong, you, the consumer, have basically no way to get your money back. But even with all those risks, this model is undeniably popular, and it just keeps growing. So let's just put the legal and safety stuff aside for a second and ask, how do you actually run one of these groups and do it well? Let's take a look at the playbook. Okay, so here's the playbook for becoming a gold medal leader. Step 1, build a niche community based on trust. Think neighbors, coworkers. Step 2, get the right tools. You absolutely need a premium membership card to max out those rebates. Step 3 is mastering logistics, using the store's 1-hour delivery to turn your home into a mini distribution hub. 4, price everything smartly, combining all your little income streams. And finally, step 5, you gotta market visually, using WeChat to build hype and get people ordering.
So what about the giants? How is Sam's Club supposed to react when thousands of micro-entrepreneurs are hacking its entire business model? Well, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the corporate counterattack. It's a real cat-and-mouse game. The first thing the big brands are doing is using data. They've started rolling out algorithms to spot reseller behavior. So if one account suddenly places a crazy number of orders in a day or is always shipping to different addresses, it gets flagged and maybe even blocked. They're trying to build a digital fence around their membership garden.
But of course, the group leaders are super agile. They don't just give up. Their countermove is simple, but it works. They just start using multiple accounts. They coordinate within their groups so different people place the orders, and poof, they get around the corporate roadblocks. It's a constant tech battle. But here's maybe the smartest move the giants are making. It's not about fighting back. It's about adapting. They're finally asking, hey, why do our customers feel the need to do this? And the answer is to start selling smaller sizes themselves, things like single-serving meals or smaller jugs of cooking oil. Basically, if you can't beat them, you make their entire business model completely unnecessary. And all of this leaves us with one last really fascinating question. In this whole battle, who is really changing whom? Is this a story about a grassroots consumer movement that's forcing these massive corporations to evolve? Or is it a story about those corporations eventually figuring out how to absorb this new demand, pulling everyone back into their official, regulated world? The answer is still being written every day in the shopping carts of millions of people.